The Flower Shop. Chapter 16. Fair and Square. Read by Paige Lindsay. Viktor sat in his team briefing, looking down at his hands. He worried about Hermione. Her best friend had deceived her to trick her into a relationship. He shook his head, disgusted by Potter's actions. But he knew he had left her in a slightly better mood. "You go. I'll be okay. Just one thing." He had said he would do anything for her. Beat them. Clearly and fairly. No pushing Ron off of his broom. He chuckled before kissing her forehead and leaving her be. "Now, we know the strategy. Long goals. It is what we're good at, so we'll stick with it." Alexei pulled Viktor from his train of thought. They huddled and broke, prepared for the match. Alexei pulled Viktor close and whispered to him, "Viktor, I don't know what has happened, but I saw Hermione crying. Catch the snitch for her, boy. I know you can do it, and the best way for us to embarrass the Cannons is for you to catch that snitch quickly and neatly, winning fair and square," he advised him. Viktor nodded, filled with determination, and grabbed his broom. Hermione watched the game begin from the mediwitch's box. She smiled seeing the crowd cheer for Viktor, and then settled back in her seat. The game began, and the Vultures attacked heavily on defence, with the beaters set to take long shots. She attempted not to watch Viktor, not wanting to put him off of his game, so instead she watched as Ron got pushed around as the defence flew past the goals. Ron conceded almost half a dozen goals from the Vultures in the first 20 minutes, his spirit knocked by their torment. However, none of this mattered as the announcer called for the end of the match. "Witches and wizards, Viktor Krum has caught the snitch after only 32 minutes. Hermione didn't hear the rest of the announcement, looking down at Viktor, who held a small gold ball with pride written on his face. She'd asked him to win fairly, and no one could doubt that he had fulfilled her wish. The entire team had been swept up in interviews, and the men who needed soothing charms insisted on having them after their appointments with the press. "I am glad you have found each other again." A soft voice spoke behind Hermione, causing her to turn away from her watching Viktor. Luna Lovegood stood behind Hermione, small radishes hanging from her ears, and her hair infested with flowers and other shrubbery. Hermione smiled at the familiar face, forgetting that she was a Quidditch commentator, but before she could say anything, Luna continued. "I am glad that the Raxbruts have eased up on him. They used to prey on him terribly when he was at Hogwarts. Not that he knew," she mused, gazing at him. Hermione would have been annoyed by Luna's musings, but she had learned to find them charming rather than ridiculous. "Thank you, Luna. How is everything?" she asked, genuinely interested, not having seen Luna since the end of the war. "Things are good. I'm studying magical creatures with Rolf Scamander. He sees the Nargles too, and wants to know more about the creatures I see." Hermione chuckled, glad that Luna had found someone to share her love of the weird and wonderful. Before a proper conversation could be struck, Luna was waving goodbye, promising to owl Hermione as soon as she could. Hermione had grabbed Ivan before he could get away, leading him towards the tent. "Really, Hermione, I am fine," he protested, but she sent his limp a sharp look and he soon stopped protesting. When they reached her tent, Hermione entered and froze when she saw Ginny stood by her desk. "I'll be 1 minute, Ivan," she called to him, and then entered her tent. "Ginny, what are you doing here?" she asked in a shocked tone. Ginny shook her reddened face, cheeks still wet with tears. "I am so sorry, Hermione, for everything my mother, Harry and Ron did. I never knew. Please believe me when I say I didn't know." Her voice faltered, and Hermione pulled her in for an embrace. "It is all right. I know you were unaware, else I am sure you would have told them what fools they were being," she laughed, pulling Ginny to arm's length. "Now, don't be too harsh on Harry. What he did was terrible, but he did it with reasonably good intentions. I need time to heal, but you are in love, and you shouldn't let me get in the way. Be angry at him, but don't shut him out forever, okay?" Ginny smiled and nodded. "I don't know how you are being so good about this. I would have hexed him all the way to Azkaban." They laughed together and Hermione shook her head. "It has been done, and it is in the past now. I have moved on, and I am happy, truly happy, for the first time in a long time." She smiled up at Ginny. "You know I love you, Ginny, but you must go. Owl me in the week," she asked, and Ginny nodded, pulling Hermione in for one last hug before apparating out of the room. Hermione attended to the men who needed treatment and was tired after the long day. She packed away her tent into her satchel and made her way to the team's quarters. She saw Sergei through the gap in the tent and told her he would get Alexei. "You are tired," Alexei stated, looking down at her and her drooping eyelids, a small smile on his face, knowing how hard she has worked. Why don't you and Victor apparate back and you can rest? The rest of us will go through the portkey." She nodded, struggling to keep her eyes open, and Alexei chuckled and smoothed down her hair affectionately. "Wait one moment and I will get him." Just as he disappeared into the tent, Hermione saw an orange figure rushing towards her. Ron gasped as he reached Hermione, running to the Vratsa tent to catch her before they left. "Hermione!" he panted, his hands on his knees. "What is it, Ron?" Hermione couldn't help feeling ashamed at the bitter twinge in her voice. "Please, just listen to me. I want you to be happy, no matter what Mum or Harry say. That is what I want." "He makes you happy, doesn't he?" he breathed, speaking a mile a minute. "Yes, more than I can say, Ron," she replied, a smile in her voice. "I couldn't give you what you needed, Hermione, and I am sorry for trying to hang on to something that made you so unhappy. But he has that thing that you want, and you love him." Ron laughed in disbelief that he was letting her go, but glad that he could be friends with her once again. "I'm glad you understand, Ron. I'm still angry about what has happened, but I hope you find someone who has that thing you need." She smiled at him and was surprised how easy it was to begin forgiving him. They shook hands, and although she was still angry and upset and hurt, she had to respect Ron for coming to her and apologising and giving her and Victor his blessing. She smiled fondly as she watched the orange figure walk away, hoping that once the dull pain she felt faded, that she could seek out Ron and attempt to begin rebuilding their friendship.